All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. Welcome to Curating Community Museums as Cultural Hubs. Sometimes my computer is a little bit lagging when it comes to the next slide. See. Today our partners are the Florida Humanities, Florida Arts and Culture, and Visit Florida. And I just want to introduce myself. I'm Laura Nimmers, the Florida Association of Museums Foundation Program Manager, and also Melinda Horton. She's our Executive Director. Today, if you need closed captioning, you can find that as CC on your control panel. This presentation is being recorded today. It's going to be very important that you know that you can use the chat box today because it's going to be an informal conversation, and you can feel free to put something in the chat if you have any questions. If we don't get to it immediately, we will still continue after the webinar so we can ask questions after that. After the webinar, you will be getting a feedback survey. So if you can please respond to that, that would be great. That informs us of what kinds of things you like, what you liked about it, and what you would like to see in the future. Got two great speakers today. We have Tiffany Baker. She's the director of Florida Historic Capitol Museum, and Grace Robinson. She's the executive director of the Gadsden Arts Center and Museum. Just to let you know, we have another webinar coming up in March, on March 31st. That will be Information Management Systems at the Harn Museum of Art, a registrar's perspective, with Jess Yulesman. She's the senior registrar at the Harn. So hopefully you can sign up for that. If not, please encourage your staff to do so because it'll be very informative on record keeping. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce Tiffany and Grace and let them start the conversation.
Thank you so much, Laura, and everyone for being here. We were really super excited to see the diversity of the institutions that signed up today. You're representing all sorts of places across the state and all sorts of size and thematic focuses. So there's a lot of really fun and interesting colleagues in this group today. So what we'd like to encourage you to do before anything else, while you're kind of listening to the conversation, please be using the chat and looking at the list of attendees. And your homework today is to select one other person or two if you really want to, get an A++ and meet that person, contact them in the chat, message with them, and then make plans to maybe, meet up virtually or in person later, because that's what this is all about, is connecting with each other and creating engagement. And the only way that we can really do that successfully is by working together as a community and learning from each other. So please do that. That's your homework for today. As Laura said, I'm Tiffany Baker. I'm the director of the Historic Capitol Museum, and Grace is here with me today virtually. She's to my right, so that's why I'm, pointing at her in the virtual sphere. But what we really hope to do with the discussion today is to kind of highlight our institutions, the ways that our two facilities, our two gathering places, serve our communities, ways that we have tried to find new audiences and open our doors to new people, as well as, and I apologize if you can hear a little bit of chaos in the background. I just heard some kids run past my office. It was Children's Day at the Capitol today, so there's been a lot of excitement, mascots, bands, and they were just fed, and so they're running around. So I apologize if there's noise in the background. But again, engagement, and sometimes it's how to manage crowds, maybe discourage a tiny bit of engagement, depending on what is happening at your institution. So all of those things we'll try to address today. We'd like for you to use the chat, pop in, supply some questions if you're feeling you want to contribute. And Laura will be watching the chat for us and allowing you to drop into the discussion at key points. So that's kind of how it's going to flow today. But before we get started with kind of the more formal discussion, Grace, is there anything you wanted to add or say as a welcome to the group?
Yeah, I'd love to just share a little bit about each of our institutions. So our attendees can see how they might fit with our framework. So I'll start with that, Tiffany, and pass it back to you. So the Gadsden Arts Center and Museum is a small, community-driven organization. So we are guided by 90-ish active working volunteers who serve on various advisory committees. We have a board of directors and an endowment trust board of directors. And this year, 59% of our income is contributed income and foundation support. So, in this climate, we are increasingly fueled by individuals making those giving decisions. And we do, other than some endowment support, we earn and raise every dollar needed to be here every year. Although we are small, we're seen as a regional art museum in our area of Florida. We were accredited by the American Alliance of Museums in 2016, so that is rare for a museum our size. We are 5 full-time, 4 part-time, and 21 seasonal part-time employees, and our budget's about $745,000 this year, so we are small. We used to be much smaller. When I started, our budget was $215,000, and we had an even smaller staff. And then in addition to our annual appeals, we have a capital campaign going on. We're doing a lot of facility projects. We're 75% to $1 million goal after a year, and we've got an endowment approaching 2 million, and around 18,000 participants a year. So that's a quick overview. Tiffany?
Thank you, Grace. For us here at the Historic Capitol, the other thing to keep in mind, part of the reason that we're together on this is that although our institutions may sound a little different on paper, we have a lot of commonality, and because we're serving the same region, we have a lot of the same issues, colleagues, and audiences. And so it's kind of figuring out how to engage with them in similar but different ways. So for us, we're located right in the heart of Tallahassee at the Historic Capitol. We are housed in the 1902 Historic Capitol building, and that is really our largest collections artifact that we call it. The city population for us here in Tallahassee is 200,000, county population more broadly, 300,000. We serve between 50,000 and 60,000 visitors a year. Our budget is approximately $1 million in operating, plus a facilities management budget that goes through DMS. So they set the priorities for what needs to be repaired, fixed, updated, and how that is done within the sort of physical plan of the Capitol. Our staffing is 9 FTE positions plus 6 part-timers who essentially are front desk staff for us. We're open 363 days a year and are free. In addition to our legislative operations and management, we have 2 stakeholder organizations, one that is a manager, the foundation, of about $750,000 in assets that are donated to us and stewarded by them. That's what we have. It's our sort of operating budget per year is between 100 is less than $100,000 in that avenue. And then our museum council, which is another group of kind of statutory members who advise us on our processes. So with those outside members, we have about 31 stakeholders in addition to the speaker and president who manage us, as well as kind of our legislative staffing. So that's how we function as well. And I just checked today because we were about to have this discussion. So in terms of our visitation so far this year, we from July 1 to today are 28,604, which is higher than normal for an early session year. And we've seen 43 countries come through. So thought that was kind of fun. It forced me to do something I should have been doing. So anyway, so that's kind of the overview for us. But in terms of our operations, and in terms of the discussion today, I should say, we wanted to look at kind of different aspects of our operations and how we manage that. And for both of us, our physical plant, our location within our community is a really big part of how we anchor the community and serve as a hub. And so, Grace, I'll let you talk a little bit more about how that works in Gadsden first.
Okay, great. So the primary building that serves as our art museum is the Bell and Bates building, which was built in 1912. And Tiffany, I hadn't really registered that my building is only 10 years newer than yours. And it is located on the historic Courthouse Square in Quincy, Florida, which was the seat of Florida government before Tallahassee. Not competing here, that goes way back. But there is a theme that comes out of that that really resonates with this community. The Bell and Bates building is beautiful, and it was really effectively repurposed to serve as an art museum. It was taken down to the studs and redone in 2000. But the historic attributes were preserved, and we did this in partnership with the state historic preservation grant. But this has been a gathering place for everyone in the community since 1912. First as a hardware store building, then as an art center. It's one of the few places in Gadsden County that if you go back that far, everyone of any race, from any walk of life, from any level of income, came together in the Bell and Bates building when it was a hardware store and continue to come together here since it's been an art center and then an art museum. So that's a great theme. And there's also something people sense when they come here, whether they're from another state or another country, or from the region, they always remark on the sense of welcome that we have here. The historic building has a really strong sense of warmth to it that you don't find in modern architecture. And then the staff and the way we develop our visitor services and our volunteers emphasize that warm welcome. One of the hurdles we're trying to overcome as an art museum in a rural area in a largely underdeveloped visual arts area is many people don't feel comfortable walking into an art museum. It looks formal to them or really fancy. They don't feel that they have the training or experience. They don't know what they're looking at. It's just an alien experience. And our goal is to make everyone feel welcome as soon as they walk in the door so that they'll come back. And I'll talk about some other programming that we have as an icebreaker and a gateway a little bit later, but that warm welcome really grows out of the small town South and the founders of this organization. And, we know we're being successful in that regard when we hear time and again from a variety of people how welcome and happy they feel when they walk through our doors. Passing that back to you, Tiffany.
So similar to Gadsden and similar to Grace's work at the museum, we too are, the historic capital has been a physical sort of anchor for the community, not only a physical anchor, but an economic driver. So for those of you who don't know that the sort of history of Tallahassee from 1824, when it was selected as Tallahassee, as Florida's single capital, this area in which the historic capital is located has had some sort of hub to it for the community. That's where the first buildings were built for the state government. And from there, everything developed around it. And so physically, buildings were added that were serving the purposes of the government in some way. So there were offices, there were merchants, there were hotels, there were places of worship that all developed around this kind of central location. And so the historic capital in this area in Tallahassee, Capitol Square, has essentially been the physical hub for the community. So that's part of our history that we focus on. The other part of it is that we've been the economic driver because so many of, again, the businesses, the hotels, the merchants, and everything developed around this building. We were also the kind of economic driver for the community and continue to be so today. If you look at the sort of the numbers for Tallahassee, in addition to the higher education, I have alarms set so that we can keep going and moving. In addition to being the center of one of the economic centers, in addition to the higher education institutions and all of that, we're one of the economic drivers. And now we're a tourism economic driver because of things like those 43 countries that visit Tallahassee every year. People get off the highway specifically to come to the Capitol to do the 50 Capitol Quest, for example. And so we're driving a tourism economy as well. And so we're serving in both ways as a physical hub. But that's been since 1824. But we also have been a town square location where people met, because this is also where decisions were being made, not just for our local community, but for the state as a whole. The historic Capitol building was the working capital until the 1970s. So there's a long history of people gathering here. And now today is the museum, because of the look that we have with the 1902 version and being right at the front steps, the front door essentially of the Capitol complex, we also serve as the symbolic seat of Florida's government. So again, people are gathering here to make decisions, to launch campaigns, to make their voices heard, and all of that. So like Grace, it is really important to us as an institution for us to make people to feel comfortable in our spaces, whether it be on the steps on the outside or inside. And so a lot of what we've done recently in the last like 10 years or so has been about making our physical building more approachable and more welcoming to the public. And we'll talk about a couple of those enhancements when we look at kind of the audiences and the programming that we've done. But that's really been one of our primary focuses, because what we want to do is to bridge that gap between that formal exterior and make people feel like this is a place for them, even when they're teeny tiny, which is why things like Children's Day are so important to us, because we're hoping that if they can run around in this building and feel like this is a place that's for them, then later, when they're older, they'll come back and make their voice heard in whatever way is appropriate. And so we've kind of implemented some things in the museum to do that even more than we did in the past. And so that's kind of how we serve as the hub for the community in our area. So let's see. I was going to say we've sort of reached a stopping point for a moment where we could potentially get some feedback from everyone. I was wondering, is there anyone who wants to share the way that their particular building or their institution serves as a hub in their community? I think let's hear from two other folks about the ways that you serve your community in that way. Anyone who wants to contribute? Hand up at this point, maybe, or in the chat.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm Thea. Joined a little late. I'm at the Amelia Island Museum of History. I don't know why it's echoing. Can't figure that out. But we're located in an old jailhouse. And one of the things we have done is initiate a community appreciation day. It happens on Labor Day. And we found that that was the best day we can bring locals in, as well as those visiting families from other places. That has been to be quite a welcoming event for us. It's free and open to the public. There are tours that are given all day, and we have things that are directed towards children as well as for adults. So it's a great drop-in place, and we just make it welcome for everybody, with tours happening every hour.
Tiffany, could you hear that okay? It was a little bit of feedback, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I've had a few people
don't
in the
know
chat
why.
say they couldn't hear.
I think the feedback is Thea has signed in twice, and when
Yeah,
you sign
that's
in
what
on two devices, they'll fight with each other. So you have to
Yeah.
sign in on just one.
Oh gosh, how do I do that?
That's okay.
That's all right. I think what I heard from you, Thea, is that you have a very successful Labor Day program where you essentially host open house for the community. And I'm not sure if Amelia is a paid institution, but it sounds like you probably
Yes,
waive the
yes.
fees on that days if you're not. Yeah. And so that does sound like a successful event. And I know that opening those doors on days like that are such a helpful, just kind of having a day when you invite everyone can be such a successful experience to bridge that gap between formality and informality, right? Fun learning opportunities. So I think that's a great one. And I also want to point out, I saw that Amelia, you recently took in, I believe it was y'all, took in a historic kind of community artifact and are now stewarding it in like a statue, right, that's been relocated from downtown. So I'm
Yes.
sure that, yeah, drawing that artifact from downtown into your, and serving that role in your community is going to be a whole new world of opportunity and engagement that y'all
yes.
didn't have before. So
Correct.
yeah, that's really exciting. Okay, great. That's awesome. Do we want to hear from one more person about their institution or a way that you all have played a central role in the community? All right. Well, I'm gonna start calling on people after the next one, so y'all be ready. But we'll talk to somebody else in a minute. But let's transition for a minute. The next sort of topic that we wanted to look at is how do we encourage growth in our institutions? So museums often, or historic sites in particular, I know are viewed as kind of stuck in time and just holding in place. And so, yeah, we are the holders of the history, but we are also catalysts for community growth and institutional growth. And so, Grace, I would love for you to talk about how you all have expanded your reach and your impact in downtown.
Absolutely. So Tiffany and I talked about our buildings and how that can be an icebreaker, and how they're a symbol of community gathering. And then we talked a little bit about how we bring families in. So like Tiffany's Children's Day today, every Saturday here is a free family day at Gadsden Arts. In fact, in order to serve our mission of bringing arts education to everyone in this region, we devote 30% of our budget to free programs for children, youth, and families year-round in the museum, in schools, and through take-home programs. Which is all done through fundraising, and I'm the development department. So it's quite a challenge, but it has a lot of support. So the Free Family Saturdays are a wonderful gateway because although many people aren't comfortable walking into a major exhibition in a museum gallery, they're comfortable going into an art making space with their children or grandchildren, especially when they make the mess in our place, not at home, and they have staff or volunteers to guide them. And so that's where families start. And then we always have a game or a treasure hunt that lures them from the art zone through the museum to explore the galleries, because once they find things in the art, the children can go to visitor services to choose their prize. We have a reading corner through a community partnership that is devoted to literacy, where families can read together. Then the children can also choose a free book before they leave. And we have an Art at Home Kits program that started during the pandemic, and the children leave with one of those as well. So you get a bunch of free stuff, and it's fun. And like Tiffany, I love seeing children run through the museum looking for things. So you had the old stodgy security guard glaring at you, stereotype of museums, and then you have a little child with the flyer in one hand and a pencil in the other, and the parent chasing after them. And parents have said to me more than once, "You're tricking me into going and looking at the art." And I say, "You're right." But what happens is these families come time and again. So we have new activities every month. So we have families that come every month. We have families whose children make them come every month. We have families that come every time we change out our exhibitions, which is quarterly. And that brings me to program design. So we identify there are countless communities within our community, is what I've learned in 20 years here. Countless. I used to think you could easily name 3 or 6 or some finite number of communities. There are unlimited numbers of communities. So we're constantly reassessing, are we reaching children and young families? Are we reaching our youth? We developed a program specifically for youth who love art, to help them develop as artists and learn about careers in the arts. And that particular program this year serves 19 students from 9 schools in the region, and the students are hired as museum employees. There's some of our seasonal part-time employees to work for the museum, to learn, to develop family programming, to host an exhibition. We are expanding that program so that we have paid summer jobs for 2 of our 19 students. So they will have a quality job all summer long in our museum. That's called our Creative Futures Council. And that program leads on up to our college and university intern program. So when we're looking at different communities, it might be age, it might be geographic location, it might be other different demographic or income groups. They might be informed by partnerships we're able to form. I mentioned the Reading Corner, that's with the National Hookup of Black Women Gadsden chapter. They have 9 reading corners across the county. So that was an opportunity to promote literacy in conjunction with visual art. They go hand in hand. So we're constantly looking for opportunities and asking the question, who are we not reaching yet? Who are we not seeing in our museum? As a catalyst for growth, we are located in downtown Quincy on the Courthouse Square. And we do have a beautiful facility anchored by that iconic Bell and Bates hardware store building. And so we inspire people to buy homes here. We have a very large historic district, 36 blocks, our historic district in Quincy. So beautiful early 1920s or early 1900s homes, late 1800s homes. So we inspire people to buy and maintain those beautiful properties. We've inspired private investment in the commercial buildings downtown. We've inspired businesses to start down here, and then we help keep them alive through the traffic we draw. So we attracted visitors. Just those who signed our guest log were from 25 states and 5 countries in the last 12 months. So we're attracting people into Gadsden County that might otherwise pass by or not come out from the larger region. And all those things make a real difference in the community. And then the other thing people don't think about sometimes is growing your community by just bringing your residents together, bringing residents downtown and together. So we have a lot of volunteers, as I mentioned earlier, and they really develop relationships with people they might not have otherwise met, or maybe have diametrically different beliefs on the political scale or in terms of religion or some other core things. And I know what all of our people are about, and I know they form great friendships and talk to each other regardless of their differences. And that's a really important thing we do.
Yeah, that's a really fabulous example, Grace. And I really love that you highlighted that there is the private investment that's coming after y'all in your investment as a public institution. As someone who comes to Gadsden, I can attest to that. There's a new brewery. It's awesome. It's like one of our favorite spots. And they moved from Tallahassee to Gadsden County because the opportunity presented itself and because the square is coming together so dynamically. The other thing I want to highlight for you, Grace, kind of give you a shout out, is that your engagement with your board. I know that at least one of your board members has personally invested in the square now because of his work with you, and he's renting one of the units to draw people back into downtown to live. And then I know he's renting the lower level so that people then can open businesses. And so just like that ripple effect of your institution is amazing. And I feel like too, we need to highlight the effectiveness of the Main Street organizations and those networks. Y'all, if you're not involved with them, get involved and toot your own horn to them. That's one thing I keep kind of, shouting at the Main Street statewide coordinator is that, yes, it's an economic development initiative, but y'all need to be really focusing on these anchors, which are these long-time cultural institutions like y'all and like us that will be there typically year after year when people need, something to do or to promote when they're opening a new business, and taking a chance. So you need those kind of stalwart, longtime institutions next to these people who are, taking a first step into economic development. And so we really need to focus on that. For us as at the Historic Capitol, I'll highlight 2 times when I feel like we have done some engaging work that has brought new people into the museum and new eyes looking at us as an institution. The 2 different things that we have done that have been pretty effective in generating some new look at the institution is we have every summer we do this activity. It's called All Ages Game Night. It's a offshoot of a trivia night series that we do, but it's specifically targeted at families and or like a mom and like maybe a daughter and her friends. And what it is it's a team game night where it's like challenges, physical challenges, sort of like Double Dare, if you're familiar with that, like where you would go and answer questions and then you might get slimed if you don't move fast enough through an obstacle course. That's what we do, which is completely different than what you normally would encourage in this space. We on a daily basis have legislators who are meeting with student groups and like kind of formal interactions or ceremonies or advocacy days. This is just one night in June where we say, come on in, we're going to give you pizza, drinks, usually alcohol, and you're just going to run and you're going to play tic-tac-toe, you're going to throw things, you're going to put costumes on, all of that. And every year we change the theme to whatever temporary exhibit that we have. It sells out every year. And actually the adults have more fun than the kids. The dads are out of control. And we really love it. And it's just a way we think of changing the feeling in the building. And it's been very successful. And as I said, we've had repeat visitors that come to other programs now because of that. They realize it's kind of fun. It's not too hard to get here, and why not do it? And so we've gotten members out of that and just new groups. So that's been really fun for us. The other sort of instance, which is kind of an unusual one in the way that we serve the community, but has been very effective with attention from even just like the local media and our board members and kind of stakeholders. Whenever we've had a major storm, frankly, in Florida, a hurricane, something where people are evacuating and people are coming to Tallahassee, or even within our own community, because of where we are in the Capitol complex and in downtown, we almost never lose power. And if we do, we're one of the first that gets power back. Kind of like hospitals, we're kind of on that same like kind of line. I think it's just because of where we are. And because of that, we try to be one of the first institutions back open. And we advertise it broadly. And we set up this last time, it was, I think, in last October when people were coming from south in Central Florida. We essentially take one of the museum rooms that is normally an exhibit. We put chairs, comfy chairs in there, let people come in, plug in. We have snacks. This last time we turned on the Weather Channel and the news so that people could sit and watch it because they did not know what was going on in their communities except for what they could see. And so we created a viewing room. And out of that, those are days where people just pour in. We tell the local hotels like what's going on. And it creates a lot of engagement. And also, frankly, for us as staff, it takes us from a place of feeling like we are at the whim or things are out of control, especially when it's happening kind of in our local communities or where we've been really heightened in preparing and then maybe something hasn't happened to us. It gives us control back. And so it brings us together as a staff in addition to bringing the broader community together and those who are outside of the community by offering this service. And again, just by posting it on like Facebook and Instagram, we get a lot of support then from our board. I'm surprised at, maybe when they don't normally comment or respond to some of our work, this is something that they respond very strongly to. And so that's just a different level of engagement, but it's also just responding to a need. But the engagement is a benefit out of it, a second-hand benefit. So that's just another time when I felt like we sort of changed the purpose of the building, providing like a shelter and a warm spot to land, soft spot to land, that changes who we serve. And so that's a space for us. We can stop now for a minute, 2:40, I was going to say, and see if there was anyone who wanted to contribute maybe a story or a time or a program that you feel has been really effective in bringing a new audience, a different audience or meeting a new need in your community. Let's see. Maybe in the chat, or if you want to put your hand up. I'm trying to see like who's on that I know
Yeah.
has done something.
I'd be interested to hear some creative ideas. I mean, I think we all kind of came on here so we could kind of get some cool ideas for how we can, work with our communities. And I'm sure all these people here have done some interesting things. And I'm just sort of curious, what have you done that's been creative? David Reed.
Yes.
Hey, so I'm David Reed. I'm with the Florida Museum of Natural History. We're on the campus of the University of Florida, and we're undergoing a big renovation now. So our building is closed to the public and will be in total for about 18 months. And so, for example, when we can't use our building, our education team and even our gift shop have gone out into the community to make sure that people remember who we are. And they've done this through pop-ups. They've gone to the University of Florida games, sporting events to set up tables, all in the spirit of telling them the story that we're still here and we're going to be back and we're going to be open again. But for now, this is where we are. We're in the community with you, and that's been really helpful to us.
I see that Charlotte Dunn from Vizcaya Museum has said that they started a farmers market a few years ago. Charlotte, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, uh, gosh, it's probably been 6 years ago now. We do it on Sundays, and our campus has a part of it that is free for the public to come into, so they can come into the farmers market, and we're developing that whole side of our estate. We have, I think, 11 historic buildings on that side of the estate, of which we've already restored one piece of it, and now 5 pieces of it will be restored by December. But the farmers market has drawn in all the families, all the local communities. We have many, many partners that come in and do activities with the kids. So that's what we're doing.
I also see that you wrote that you had worked with your local libraries. And I think libraries and museums, they make such a good combination. It's a really good partnership to have. So do you have anything else you want to share about that?
Yeah, our county library system has a library pass program, and we've limited ours to it's only applicable to Vizcaya during the summers because basically it gets used a lot. So during season, we're so packed that we really needed to shift it more towards our Florida summer, which is everybody's down season. But we still have a lot of people that come through. We also work with our county government on they have a passport program there that that under the age of, I think it's 21, that people can get $5 tickets in. So we partner with a whole bunch of different entities to deal with the price barriers.
Yeah, that just shows how important partnerships can be. And then we see in the chat too that Manatee County Agricultural Museum partners with local libraries, and they've been putting content in the libraries through exhibits. So I think that each of you have highlighted, Charlotte, and you're highlighting how important it is to bring communities to you, to your physical location. But then David and our colleague from the Manatee County Agricultural Museum are highlighting how important it is to focus on going out to, like meeting your community where they are. And not, I think a lot of times we become really focused on who's coming through the door when we can be just as impactful when we're out in the community doing different things. So I think that's really important to like not forget that focus. So that's awesome. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, oh my gosh, they're doing all kinds of things. Look in the chat about the Manatee County Agricultural Museum and their activities with the library. That sounds awesome. Super fun partnerships. Partnerships are so important. Okay, so let's move. Let's see it's 2:45, perfect. We wanted to look at, and that's a perfect segue, museums as gathering spaces. So how are people coming and how are they using your spaces, and how are we bringing people together and maybe using your spaces in non-traditional ways? They're the ways that they choose, instead of maybe the ways that you program. So Grace, I'm going to let you talk about how y'all manage that within your institution, and then I'll jump on.
Absolutely. I'm going to take a quick step back to the growth section, just because we often talk about our economic impact as catalysts for growth. And we have contributing to our economic vitality as part of our mission. Everything we've been talking about is codified in our mission. But we looked at that economic impact a different way. So many of you may use the Arts and Economic Prosperity Calculator to show different funders your economic impact. But we took a look at, and this was based on some, we have some fellow nonprofits locally who are small, and sometimes, although we're small, we're seen as the big guy. And sometimes multiple nonprofits in a small area feel like one or two of them are, quote unquote, drinking up all the money. And that can be an issue. So we did an analysis of where every dollar comes from here at the Gadsden Arts Center and Museum. And that's looking at earned and contributed revenues, grants, foundations, everything. And we were surprised by the results. This is the first time we did this analysis. We found that a third of our support comes from Gadsden County, a third of our support comes from neighboring Leon County, and a third of our support comes from across the country. So for fellow organizations in Gadsden County, 2/3 of our money is coming into the county from outside to benefit everyone here. So interesting analysis that you might do, and you can do that just based on the dollars coming in and the zip codes assigned, and then you can use AI to convert those into cities and states and do your own analysis. But that was really, it's a great message to share, to show how we impact the community. In terms of gathering spaces, we have one program that's unusual, and I think it works really well for us, and it may be a good idea for other small organizations. So we had space rentals for years. So people could come into our museum, rent the space, have their own event, so then they have some ownership. There are many problems with space rentals. One of the biggest ones that I saw was we had a lot of people coming into the museum and going out without ever realizing a thing about what our mission is, why we're here, and what we do. No idea. Into the rental space and out, and no action with art whatsoever, no knowledge of our program in the schools every week, etc. So we also recognized that was our only unrelated business income, which triggers a whole separate aspect to our tax return, and why bother with that if it's not a significant source of income. So everything else we do here is mission-based. So we got rid of the paid space rentals, and we have something called Create Your Own Event. And Create Your Own Event is free use of our space, and we do have parameters for group size. It's during daytime hours when we're staffed anyway. But you can use our tables and chairs. You can work with a caterer, bring in your food. But Create Your Own Event is you and your group are participating in one of a menu of museum programs, and then the space is yours. So people will plan their own event, but incorporate the museum program into their event for their group. And I know if you look at your different cultural events, your walk-in programs, pretty much anything you do, your participation is driven by people telling their friends who tell two friends who invite their network. And so this is another way to engage a broader range of people in their networks, because it's their event and it becomes their happy memory, or maybe their annual gathering in our museum, but they're participating in something mission-based that we offer. And then they have some idea why we're here. So
I actually love that so much, Grace, because we have the same problem, and we have not discontinued our rental program. As part of our service to the legislature, we have to do legislative rentals. So that's supposed to be for legislators meeting with their constituents. Like if it's school groups, they reserve a space, or sometimes it's like a delegation day, something like that. And so we already have to do that. So when that's been built into our legislative operating, then the foundation board created a rental program to go alongside that for all the other people who want to use our spaces for, UF Day, or the, boys and girls of the Big Bend want to have an advocacy day or bring legislators over. So when they initiate it, they do the rental program. So we have to kind of continue that. But so for us, I love your model and I wish we could incorporate more, but we're still kind of doing the traditional rentals. The area for us in terms of engagement and non-traditional use of the building is that at the back steps of the building, essentially the rear of the building, we are facing the Capitol courtyard, which is, if you've been to Tallahassee for an advocacy day, is a huge open space where DMS manages rentals. And so out there is where things like like FSU Day happens, where they have a press conference on the steps and they give away free food and they do all this stuff. So it's very similar to like Children's Day today. When you rent that space, there are no bathrooms available to you. The new Capitol, you have to go through security. Here at the historic Capitol, you don't. So on the basement level here, we have probably the two busiest bathrooms in all of Tallahassee, other than at like Doak Campbell Stadium, for 3 months of the year. And so for years and years and years, we had thousands of people pouring into this space to use these bathrooms and not even realizing that there was a museum above them. And so finally, 2 years ago, we took the basement level area where you walk through to go right and left to the bathrooms and installed a long-term exhibit that is essentially a comprehensive history of the building, featuring artifacts from the early period, featuring pieces of the building that were removed during the restoration in the 80s, original documents, census records, everything, all down in the space. And we made this big investment. And it's to essentially confront people with the fact that when they walk in to go to the bathroom, they're going to learn something on the way. And we have discovered that, people hang out a lot waiting for people with the bathroom and we hear all these discussions. So people are learning in the space. So that's just a new way of creating engagement with our content in a place that had been overlooked for many, many, many years. And so that's my kind of advocacy to y'all, is that think about a space that is giving you heartburn or an issue that is giving you heartburn, which, is the uncontrolled use of the bathrooms, and try to change it and make it work in your favor. So it's been pretty effective and we've really enjoyed it, and have, really, I think, gotten people to spend more time in the building beyond the bathrooms as a result of that. So think about your faces differently. Okay, we are at 2:53. So I was going to say, I think we're kind of at a point here, Grace, unless there's something else that we want to talk about individually. If not, we could kind of turn it over and maybe take questions or some ideas throwing out. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, let's do that. Does anyone have any burning questions that you want to ask the group? Like you have an issue or a challenge that you want us to workshop? Or we'd love to hear examples of ways that you have, done rentals differently or brought people into the building a little bit differently or overcome some sort of challenge. Anybody?
I just have a question for Grace.
Yes.
Sure.
Grace, when you were talking about opening up your space and letting people come in as long as they did some kind of programming or events, can you give specifics on what types of things they had on that menu you were talking about to choose from?
Sure, absolutely. And I can tell you a little bit how we manage it as well. We did rentals for 20 years in this space, or 19 years. We do have a contract we use for Create Your Own Event. Still has parameters for what can and cannot be done in our building. For example, we are a heavy timber building. We don't allow open flame because we're basically built of lighter wood. So we have a packet that they read, they initial, they sign, they do pay a damage deposit, they do get a refund. So there are things that are rental-like. And then the programs, we have a behind the scenes tour that people love. If you know nothing about an art museum, the behind the scenes tour really gives you a look at what happens in art museums that nobody would ever think of, right? And people love that. We have, of course, exhibition-based tours, and usually those are centered on our major exhibition, but the group may have a particular interest in one of our local shows or a connection with that. And then we also have a just an introductory PowerPoint that gives them a feel for Gadsden Arts, what we do, why we're here, and who we serve. And so that's another opportunity. Say that it's the city of Quincy having their annual retreat here, then I can tailor what I present to them in a PowerPoint if they want to stay in the space and keep their retreat moving. Although we really encourage the active and interactive tours. We also have our art zone. And so any kid of any age loves to go in there and do activities. And we can do a guided activity with the groups as well. Sometimes it's a combination thereof. So the Create Your Own event is a museum program. It's no longer an earned revenue that's not mission-based. It's one of our museum programs. We always do them during regular hours because any after-hours events with a staff our size really stretch our staff. So, and then we're fully staffed to offer whichever program they're interested in. So it becomes sort of an enhanced group tour, if for lack of better terminology, with different program choices. And then our maximum capacity in our gathering space is 60. So it's a manageable size as well. And we've had all sorts of different events created there, from birthday parties, 50th anniversaries, baby showers, you name it, meetings, retreats, all sorts of different things, Leadership Tallahassee, FSU med school, visit to a rural area, med students, you name it. So it's great because it brings in a broader audience to create awareness of the art museum and an icebreaker regarding art museums in general. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great way of approaching that.
So it's programming we're set up to do anyway, if that makes sense. So we're giving them the option.
Yeah, and that's one thing we didn't talk about today in depth, but quality over quantity, and the fact that you definitely are mindful of the nighttime versus daytime. We too, after COVID, we were an event factory prior, and it just was not effective. It was like we need to put our energy into the days like today where we're just running ragged already and not trying to beg, another 50 people to come through on 3 lunch and learns next week or something. And yeah, it's really about cultivating not just the audiences, but your staff. And so, yeah, so important.
And it seems like a win-win situation too, because you're building your constituents and your community, and they're getting a great place to have an event and an activity on top of it. I mean, what could be better?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's leaning into the experience, trend right now. Everyone wants an experience. So yeah.
That's right. And with their friends, they want a social experience that's edutaining. We call it edutainment around here. So educational, entertaining, and social is a winning combination. So
yeah. Well, I guess we're at 3 o'clock. Laura, do we try to end on time? Is that the
Yeah,
goal?
I mean, if anybody has more questions, or if you want to talk, like, I can stick around for a little bit longer. I don't know how everybody else is, but if no one has questions, then we can just call it a day if you're ready.
do you want to share our emails? Should anyone have any individual questions, I can throw mine in the chat, or want samples of anything. We can certainly do that. Let me see if I can.
This
And don't forget
webinar
the
will
homework.
be available on YouTube eventually. So just keep an eye out for it if you want to go back and get some more ideas, or just remember what we talked about.
Yeah, and everyone definitely reach out to each other. Make a connection.
Yeah,
that's right.
And while I have you here, if anyone has any more ideas for webinars or conversations or anything else you'd like to do, feel free to email me as well.
All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody.
Well, thank everybody for coming. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.